Hello and welcome to week 7 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. With Tanya.
Hello.
Visit. My sister is in town for a visit. And we're forcing her to watch Santa Barbara with us. 70-second Santa Barbara summary. Alright, our special guest star is going to need a quick summary of the first 30 episodes. So, here goes. In 1979, a party was thrown for Channing Capwell. Joe Perkins was in the hallway with a mysterious man with a beard. They heard a gunshot. They ran into the study and Channing was dead. Joe sent the mysterious stranger, the witness, to go for help. He picks up the gun, goes to see if Channing's okay, and Kelly walks in, thinking that her boyfriend has killed her brother. 5 years later, Joe Perkins gets out of prison, having been sent there by Kelly's testimony. He immediately sets out to try and find the real killer and is contacted by a mysterious man with a beard named Dominic, who tells Joe that he needs to break into Channing's room to find clues. He gets a whole bunch of weird things out of Channing's drawer, and then tries to figure out who Dominic is, and realizes, after following him to the graveyard, that it's his witness, who didn't show up at the trial 5 years ago and sent him to prison. So he confronts Dominic about why he didn't show up, and Dominic's mysterious accomplice hits Joe over the head and knocks him unconscious. Mason arrives and doesn't believe him. Mason is the assistant district attorney of Santa Barbara, and the older brother of Channing. And that is the main story of the murder mystery. And also, the love story of Kelly and Joe. He keeps trying to get her back, but of course she is now engaged to her former high school physics teacher, Peter Flint. That is it. We're now going to watch episode 31 of Santa Barbara. We've just watched episode 31 of Santa Barbara from September 10th, 1984. It started out with Jade finishing up her screen test for Mr. Holmby. Rusty, her co-star, is trying to take off Jade's clothes, and she complains that was not in the script. Holmby says it's implied. Danny arrives at the motel, but sees the bouncer in front of the door. So he runs back to his car to get a baseball bat, but he still can't bring himself to attack the very large man who's blocking the door. Now Jade spends most of the episode trying to avoid getting her clothes taken off. She ends up grabbing a wine bottle to threaten him with, and Danny gets the idea to set off the fire alarm. So when the bouncer leaves to go investigate that, he bursts into the room and starts smashing things with the baseball bat and grabs Jade, and they escape. They make it to the car, but the four thugs chase them down. One of them has a gun now. Another one quickly disables their car by opening the hood and grabbing a cable from inside. But luckily, Jake shows up with two police officers, and they arrest the bad guys. Jade is saved.
I thought it was interesting that even when Jade was being instructed to take her clothes off, and this was obviously a porno, that Hornby was still insisting that this was a measure of whether or not she was a serious actress, whether she would do this. So he was still playing that angle.
Now later, Jade thanks Jake for everything he did, but Jake said, well, Danny's the one who told me his name, and that's what made me remember. So Jade says that Danny is her hero, and that she's going to take him out on the time, and they're going to boogie. That's dancing for people of your age. Back in, and then Lakin and Ted basically spend the whole episode talking about their future. They have a very poorly made dinner, and they talk about the fact they've got to go back to school soon and finish the 12th grade. And Cece has told Ted he wants him to go get his MBA, and Ted asks if Lakin wants to get married and settle down, and she says no, she doesn't want to do that at all. She wants to maybe start her own business or something. So they talk a bit about the future. They joke about running away to Tahiti, but they basically conclude they want to be together. Back in Santa Barbara, Peter tells Augusta that Kelly got all messed up because of hearing about Joe finding his witness. This is the first Augusta's heard of it, and she panics from hearing that. She's just been trying to keep tabs on Joe the whole time to make sure that she knows what's going on with his investigation to find the real witness, and now she's shocked that finally a witness may have turned up. Now Mason, who had been planning this romantic evening with Veronica at the Capwell Hotel penthouse, only to be told by Peter that he couldn't have it because it was under renovation. First he gets angry at Peter for saying no, even though he's fully aware of the renovations. I don't know what Peter could have done about that. But he gets rid of everyone in the house. I mean, Kelly's on the yacht, and Cece, we don't know where he is. But he discharges the staff so he can be alone with Veronica in the house. He tells her a bit about the history of the house, that it used to be the summer home for when the family came from back east in November, and that Grandpa Capwell started it all with an Orange Grove he won in a crap game, but they were in banking too. So,
and can I just say that, for such a red hot liaison that Mason is planning, this seems like a very dull way to start an evening. This didn't seem like a really sexy date to me.
Well, at one point he does say, "Oh, I'm boring you," and they're sitting in those sexy wicker chairs that everyone sits in all the time, which is also where they have breakfast. So it'd be like having a date in the breakfast area of a Hampton Inn and Suites, I think. But before things can get more interesting, Augusta arrives, because she now knows that Mason broke into the Lockridge place to find the deed to their waterfront property, and so she tells him that she knows that. So he, says, "Oh, you can't possibly know that," but obviously now he must know that Peter told her. I mean, who else would have, right? So, but Veronica, who has excused herself to let Augusta and Mason talk, has actually sneaked off to phone Lionel. And we discovered that Lionel and Veronica are somehow working together. Veronica says to Lionel, "Does Augusta know our plan?" So somehow, even though Lionel's just shown up a couple of days ago, and Veronica's been on the show, as she says, she's been working at the Capwell Hotel for several weeks since Peter got hired. I think she's like a plant of Lionel's, put into the Capwell Enterprises to spy. So while Mason is trying to steal their land, Lionel may be trying to pull a fast one of his own on the Capwell. So it's good, because they've been starting to get worried about the Lockridges being victims of the Capwell. So it's nice to know that maybe they can fight back equally sneakily.
Yes.
Yeah. And, I also thought it was really kind of neat the way they led into that. Because up until this episode, we've seen Mason chasing a succession of secretaries. So when Veronica was introduced, there was no reason to think that she was any different. And then to suddenly find out that she's involved in this great scheme of Lionel's, that was quite a fun revelation, I thought.
Now, she's been happily seeing Peter too, right? Or was she flirting with Peter? Oh, no, she was at his place in the last episode and was trying to flirt with him, but he was too concerned about Kelly at the time to do anything. So later, when Augusta comes home, Lionel, knowing where she was, pretends to deduce where she was from a brown, short man's hair on her clothes, and some terracotta dust that looks like it came from the Capwell place. So he wonders if she's seen Mason, and she's like, "Are you having me followed?" She's not buying the deduction routine.
It was weak.
It was.
And anyway, somehow Lionel and Augusta go from arguing to kissing, as some very romantic stock music plays in the background. Now, Joe Perkins has come up with another of his difficult to comprehend schemes that just comes out of nowhere. He goes to Cruz and says, "Hey, why don't you invite Kelly over to your houseboat? She's on the yacht, in the same marina." So, this could really make Kelly be very upset with Cruz.
Yeah.
But Cruz goes along with it. And when Kelly arrives and realizes she's been had, he says, well, I just can't think of two people who deserve to be together more than you two. So that's his reason. And he leaves them alone on the houseboat. And Joe does a bit of reminiscing, but pulls out a ring. And it's the ring he was going to give her on the day they were going to get married. And he's got the date engraved in there, July 30th, 1979. But, of course, now it's the date that her brother was murdered. So he gives her this murder date ring, and she's like, oh, I don't want it. And then he goes, okay, well, then we'll just forget everything. We'll forget our love. I'll throw this out into the sea. And he goes to open the window to the houseboat. She goes, oh, okay, I'll take it. So, very intriguing.
I actually found the behavior of Joe a bit creepy in this particular scenario.
I agree.
But it's the Joe she fell in love with, so she maybe doesn't find it creepy.
Well, maybe that's what she goes for. Apparently.
It was manipulative.
Peter's getting creepy too, so maybe Kelly Capwell
Maybe that's her
is the
type.
creepy type. It's just not obvious for the first 5 years. So Kelly goes back to the yacht, and Peter says, oh, where you been? She goes, oh, I ran into Cruz, and he showed me his houseboat. And Peter said, oh, must have been a huge houseboat. You've been gone a long time.
No double entendre there.
But she's just deflecting everything. She doesn't want to talk about anything. She certainly doesn't tell him Joe was there. But, Peter has suspicions. He knows Joe and Cruz are good friends. So he says, oh, I got to go to my car and get a tape. And then dashes off. Kelly sits there alone, pulls out the ring, puts it on, thinks about Joe. Peter does not go to his car. He actually goes to Cruz's houseboat, surprised. And Joe answers, because Cruz still hasn't come home. And he's not that surprised Joe's there. He goes, oh, did you spend the night with Kelly? Oh, yeah, she was here. So then Peter says, well, let's settle this once and for all. He wants to fight with Joe, and winner take all. If Joe wins, he can stay in Santa Barbara and see Kelly whenever he wants. If Peter wins, Joe has to leave Santa Barbara and forget Kelly. And that's how they leave things. That's I guess the cliffhanger for that. So we may see a big fight between Joe and Peter tomorrow. I don't know if Joe will take him up on it. I mean, it's a risk to his parole if he's caught fighting with someone, especially if he beats up Peter, and Peter's marrying into the Capwell family, and Mason's the assistant district attorney.
It could be the plan.
That could be Peter's plan. He could want
get him both ways.
Get Joe. Yeah, he might want Joe to beat him a little bit, and then he'll go running to the police. So hopefully Cruz will come and stop things before they go horribly wrong for Joe, because Joe and Kelly forever.
It just doesn't, to me, make either of them seem like a very desirable life partner.
Well, Joe, may have learned some bad habits in prison. So he's going to have to unlearn that when he and Kelly are finally back together. And Peter's back to teaching physics at the high school. Find his next bride there.
There's a whole lot going on there with that guy.
Yeah. Does he really seem bright enough to be a physics teacher?
Well, we've never seen him.
To be fair, I don't have enough information.
No.
But he was hired to run a hotel chain based on his physics knowledge, so,
is logical.
And the fact that he was marrying into the Capwell family. So I think, I get the feeling that his secretary was doing most of the work, but now that we know she's a secret Lockridge plant, she must have some skills that she's hiding. So.
I'm sure we'll find out more about her skills as the story goes on.
Yeah, it's really exciting now to have a differentiation between some of the secretaries. Because have we seen Mason's secretary? He's talked to her on the phone a couple of times, but I think Sarah's her name. I don't think we've actually seen her, though. But I assume at some point we'll see her.
And there was the one he initially brought to the party. I guess that was in the second.
Another employee of the Capwell Hotel
chain. So he does that sort of thing fairly frequently.
Well, anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, it's
Looking
good.
forward to a week of Santa Barbara?
Yes. So excited.
What characters do you remember from when you were 9?
Mason.
Hmm.
Cece, who we didn't see in this one.
No.
Yeah.
I think
Augusta.
Oh,
For sure.
And of course.
And Lionel.
Oh, you remember
I'm
Lionel?
very
too?
familiar.
Oh, that's good. And of course, you know Augusta as Vivian Alamain on Days of Our Lives.
Probably, yeah.
Did you recognize the other Days of Our Lives actress that was on here today?
No.
That's right.
Which one?
Jade Perkins.
I recognized her, but I didn't recognize her from where.
She plays Jennifer Horton on Days of
Thank
Our Lives.
you. Yes.
Yeah,
Jen.
that's good. All right, good
Good.
one.
Thank you for connecting that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah, maybe we'll see CCC tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right.
Looking
Well,
forward to
join
it.
us again after we've watched episode 32 of Santa Barbara.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Episode 32 of Santa Barbara will have the world's biggest star as a surprise guest. Tanya, you were 9 years old in 1984. Who was the biggest star in the world?
Michael Jackson?
All right, Diane, what's your guess?
I was also going to say Michael Jackson.
Really?
All right, we will see. Diane, do you have 3 other guesses by any chance?
David Hasselhoff, Don Johnson, and Tom Selleck.
Wow, some big names from the 80s. Let's see if any of them are right as we watch episode 32 of Santa Barbara. Hi, and welcome back to Misha and Diane and Tanya Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
No, Misha and Diane Watch Santa Barbara with Tanya.
Yeah.
Don't want to change the name. The second episode. This was episode 32 that we watched, which originally aired September 11th, 1984. So, in Hollywood, Danny is borrowing a tuxedo from Jake for his evening with Jade. It's far too large, so Ted is pinning it in quite a few places. Meanwhile, Jade has borrowed a dress from Peaches. So she and Danny go to a restaurant on Sunset Boulevard. Jade wonders if they'll see any stars. She orders a shrimp cocktail for them to split. I wonder if it's the same restaurant that Danny and Ted went to a couple weeks ago where they had to split a shrimp cocktail.
Yeah, well, wherever they went, they were definitely out of their price range.
Yeah. Like the first thing she says, oh, by the way, I didn't bring much money, so I hope
Yeah.
you don't mind splitting a shrimp cocktail.
Yeah.
So there's a dance floor, so they get up and dance, and they have a nice time, and then she tells them that she's going to do a fan dance for them when they get home.
Mm-hmm.
She calls, she gets a pay, she must have just come up with this idea because she stops at a payphone to call Lakin to ask her to run up to Peaches and get the fans.
Mm-hmm.
While she's waiting for Lakin to do that, there's a man waiting to use the payphone. And it is David Hasselhoff! Diane, you're the winner of the $5 prize
Yay!
for guessing the correct celebrity
Yay!
of the week.
Good work.
The biggest star in the world. So, you had had 3 guesses. David
I did.
Hasselhoff, Don Johnson, and Tom Selleck. Now,
Mhm.
2 of those people are on NBC, so Tom Selleck probably wouldn't show up, but it does make sense that they would use an NBC star to try and promote.
So Don
Cross-promote.
Johnson actually wasn't a far-off guess.
No, but David Hasselhoff was good, and he had quite a long scene with Jade, and it was quite
He
funny.
did.
At first, she didn't recognize him, then she realized it was him. Then he makes her talk to Lakin. She makes him talk to Lakin. Danny asks where his car is. Then Jade somehow ends up stuck in the phone booth with him, and she's kind of happy to be pressed up close to him and drags that out as long as she can.
She is very starstruck.
Yeah. But he actually tells her how hard it is to be an actress, how many years people have to work at it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of actors are waiters, and that he was a waiter when he got Knight Rider. So, I don't know. This may be something that she mulls over and decides maybe it's too much work to be an actress after all.
Mm-hmm.
So they end up going back to the apartment, and Jade does a fan dance for Danny,
Yeah.
which she quite enjoys. And that's still going on by the end of the episode, I believe.
Yeah.
Now, during that dinner back at the apartment, Warren shows up from Santa Barbara. He says he's just gone to pick up some scuba gear, and thought he'd swing by and see if Lakin wanted to come home yet.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about school starting next week, so they talk about some scenarios of them running away or whatever. But really, they both are planning to come home. And then Ted says, "Oh wait, I have a plan." So Ted has some kind of a plan that because Warren says, neither of our parents are going to let you see each other.
Yeah.
So we'll see what his plan is in the next episode. Back in Santa Barbara, in the empty mansion, Mason and Veronica are drinking champagne, and the date seems to be going well. He wants to move it to the bedroom, but unlike last episode, now she seems to be, now that we know she's just there on a spying mission, she's no longer interested in sleeping with Mason. So she phones Lionel and says, "Oh, can you get me out of it?" And he says, "Oh, I could come over," and she doesn't think that's a good idea. So he said, "Well, just mention my name. That'll put Mason out of the mood."
Yeah.
So
it worked really well.
Yeah, she managed to say the word neighbors and then said, "Oh, speaking of neighbors," and then talked about Lionel, and then, that put Mason off. So she said, she left and said, "Oh, I'd like to see you again," as she was leaving.
Yeah.
Now, Cruz shows up at Santana's place unannounced, but she's actually waiting for Cece to show up. So he notices that she's put her hair up to look just like Sophia.
Yeah.
And, quickly figures out what she's doing. So Cece arrives, and she said, "Oh, I've got the drawings for you, but I've also done some drawings of the master suite at the Capitol Mansion, which is Cece's bedroom." And she says, "Oh, I really like these." And I forget whose idea it was, but we need to go back to my bedroom to really look at these drawings there properly.
Yeah. To visualize it.
Yeah. So they go. And while they're still in the atrium, Cece runs to make a phone call, and then Mason shows up drunk, and he's like, "Oh, there's Santana right in my house."
Right up.
He goes, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here." Yeah. And then Cece walks in and goes, "Oh, I get it."
I thought it was actually interesting in this whole sequence with Santana that when Cruz was talking to her, he actually sort of reinforced some of the things that Rosa had been saying. His perception was that her seduction of Cece wasn't going to be a terribly good idea either, which I found interesting. Yeah.
And it's not because he's interested in her himself, it's just because he realizes that it's probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
Back at the Lockridge house, Lionel is lighting candles, and he creates a circle of truth for him and Augusta to stand in which no one can lie to each other. So the first thing she asks is who called, because Veronica had just been talking to Lionel, and he makes up some guy's name and said he wanted to get out of a golf game with Mason and how to do it. So he starts off with a lie in the circle of truth. So then he asks her if she slept with Joe Perkins, and as for the circle of truth, she lies and says no. Then she asks if he cheated on her. He says no. So I think
Wasn't a very good circle.
they probably both know they're lying.
Yeah.
But they embrace at the end of it.
Yeah.
So I think they're happy with their own form of the circle of truth.
They seem to understand each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is an important scene for the viewers, because we've seen Augusta do all sorts of nasty things, plus sleep with Joe and probably Peter.
Yeah.
And we've heard all the rumors of Lionel's, women, and he says, "Oh, but I never slept with another woman in Santa Barbara."
Yeah.
So it's good to see that they're, for the viewer to see that they're both fine with whatever is going on.
Yeah.
We can get on with it, not worrying about them.
Yeah.
Now on the houseboat, on Cruz's houseboat, where Peter has just proposed a fight to determine who gets Kelly, Joe said, "No, that's stupid, I'm not going to fight you." And so Peter punches him unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm.
And so Joe punches him back, and after about 2 punches, he punches Peter very hard in the ribs, which kind of knocks him out.
Mm-hmm.
So he drags Peter's carcass over back to the Capwell yacht where Kelly is waiting, and brings him in. She says, "What happened?" He says, "Oh, let him tell you." Now this is, Joe once again letting things be unclear.
Yeah.
Just just tempting
Yeah.
a misunderstanding, right?
Yeah.
Because he must know Peter's going to say that Joe started it.
Yeah.
Which he does when he wakes up. He goes, "Oh, Joe attacked me." And she goes, "Where did he attack you?" He says, "Oh, at Cruz's houseboat." So right away, Kelly doesn't believe him because he had said he was just going to his car to get a tape, right? And he actually went straight to the houseboat. So
Yeah.
I think Kelly knows he's lying.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, I'm going to phone Mason first thing in the morning and have him arrest Joe for attacking me." And she says, "No, don't do that. First of all, that's going to suck me more into this because now I'll be involved in this. And this is not the kind of thing, I want to think about." So I think, he agrees, but who knows, right?
Yeah.
So then eventually he falls asleep. Kelly sneaks out of bed, gets her clothes, tiptoes out, knocks on Joe's door. He's doing sit-ups at Cruz's place. Cruz is still not back from his Santana visit. And Kelly walks in, and she says, "Oh, why'd you hit Peter?" And he's like, "Of course I'm not the one who hit Peter first. He hit me first." But Joe doesn't really... Joe quickly focuses back on the fact that he can see, just by looking at you, that you're still in love with me. And so she decides to give the ring back. He says, "Oh, can't you keep it hidden from Peter?"
Yeah.
He says, "No, I just can't have it with me."
Yeah.
And then they somehow start kissing. So we've seen that before.
And we've heard that before with Peebo Bryson.
Yeah, we've heard the song before.
Yeah.
We know what that means. They're both into it. But we'll see at the beginning of the next episode how quickly Kelly backpedals and things go back the way they were before.
Yeah.
So that's it for episode 32. Anything else you wanted to talk about, or predictions for what's going to happen next?
No, I'm interested to see what this plan Ted has will look like.
Yeah. I somehow think they're going to come back to Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
But maybe he has an idea how they can live together. I don't think the Capwells or the Lockridges would allow that. So.
And I am interested to see how the little plot that Lionel has going with Veronica will unfold. I was surprised Mason told her basically everything.
All the details.
All the details.
That's right. He said
He was pretty drunk, though.
Yeah,
I'm going to get that waterfront property for my dad.
Yeah.
He actually talks a bit about the history of the Lockridges and Capwell feud. And he says, it goes back to the turn of the century. The Lockridges did something to my family, and the Capwells retaliated. So this is a little more of the backstory on the Capwell-Lockridge feud. So it's, it doesn't go all the way back to 1795 when the property was bought. It's just like CeCe's dad or grandfather may have been, the one involved in it. So I hope we hear more about that. Minx might be old enough to even know what the incident was.
Yeah, could be. I guess the only other aside is that I really didn't realize until Lionel came back and was having his conversation at the Capwell house when Lincoln had run away briefly, that Lakin's name is Lakin. I always thought it was Lincoln. So
that's why I gave you that sheet in the first week. You
yeah.
could memorize everyone's names.
I guess I didn't.
That's still on the coffee table here.
I guess I didn't notice that detail.
So did you just hear him pronounce it more clearly, or?
Yeah.
Well, he had mentioned a couple of episodes ago it's a Scottish name. Is that what he said?
Yeah, I would have thought the Scottish word for lake was loch.
No, but he said it was named after a loch. So maybe there's a Loch Lake in somewhere. Hope we could research that. Well, that wraps it up for this episode. And later on, we're going to watch episode 33. And several things happen in that. As far as I'm aware, that will be worth noting.
Good.
Great.
Assuming we even notice them. Right. We'll be back after we watch episode 33. Bye.
Bye-bye.
This week's spotlight is on David Hasselhoff, who played himself in episode 32 of Santa Barbara. David Hasselhoff was born on July 17, 1952, in Baltimore, Maryland, to Joe Hasselhoff, a business executive, and Dolores Therese Mullenix. David began acting, singing, and dancing lessons at the age of 7. Hasselhoff was married to Catherine Hickland from 1984 to 1989, and to Pamela Bach from 1989 to 2006. They have 2 children. His first credited role is a 1973 episode of The Dean Martin Show. He appeared on The Young and the Restless for 6 years, and in shows like Police Story and The Love Boat before becoming the star of Knight Rider from 1982 to 1986. Knight Rider finished 25th in the ratings for the 1983-84 television season, which ended a couple of months before Hasselhoff's Santa Barbara appearance. By the end of the 1984-85 season, Knight Rider was no longer in the top 30. After Santa Barbara, Hasselhoff starred in his second big hit series, Baywatch, which ran from 1989 to 2000. While continuing to act, Hasselhoff also has a singing career. He is particularly popular in Germany.
Hi, welcome back. We have watched episode 33 of Santa Barbara. And let's start with the summary. Peter is asleep in the house, in the yacht. Mm-hmm. Kelly still kind of got most of her clothes, but she grabs her purse and sneaks out. When Peter wakes up and sees she's not there, he bursts into Cruz's houseboat and demands to know where Kelly and Joe are. Cruz doesn't have any idea. Cruz tells Peter he knows about the deal he made with Joe, that whoever won the fight would get Kelly. Peter says, I don't know anything about this. And Cruz says, Joe will refresh your memory. He says he learned how to do that in the joint. So Cruz is pretty blunt with Peter. I think Cruz doesn't like Peter. I think we can assume from this.
I don't feel like many people really like Peter very much.
Kelly talks to Tony in the locker room at the gym, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Her best friend Tony, who you may have recognized as Renee Jones, who played Lexi Carver on Days of Our Lives for about 20 years. So at one point Kelly tells Tony she met Joe. She goes, I love him, but he's wrong, he killed my brother. So she says things like, Joe knew it from the minute he came back, that I still loved him, all this stuff that we were all not sure about ourselves. Peter finally finds Kelly and demands to know where she went, which gets Kelly quite angry and says it's none of your business.
Yeah.
Some flowers arrive, and Peter gets them and hands them to her. She says thanks. And he says, well, they're not for me. And she opens the card, and the ring is inside. So obviously the flowers are from Joe. Mm-hmm. Peter demands answers, but Kelly just runs upstairs.
Yeah.
Santana arrives at the mansion.
Mm-hmm.
Mason wonders how she can look so good after a late night. Mm-hmm. So he was keeping tabs on her and Cece the night before, I guess. Cece says he's happy with the work that she's proposing in his bedroom. And she says, the whole house really should be done to your taste. And he agrees with that.
So more opportunities for the two of them to spend time together?
Mm-hmm. Later, Cruz sees Santana and notices that she still looks like Sophia. Mm-hmm. He wonders if she wants to be the new lady of the house or just Cece's mistress. Santana is not happy with that.
Well, it was a bit of a burn, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well,
it is
maybe
hard
he's
to tell
seriously interested in knowing the answer.
It is hard to tell her endgame, though.
Yeah.
She may just want the influence and the money,
right?
rather than the commitment.
Yeah.
Well, she wants to know where Cece has her son hidden. That's her main goal. So... now Lionel and Veronica are somewhere having a hot tub together.
I wondered about the timing of this. Like, did he run over to her house at some point in the middle of the night, or? Yeah, because that was first thing in the morning. Yeah. They're in that hot tub. So she tells him about the night before with Mason that she managed to get out by invoking his name, and she tells him about what Mason told her, that definitely he's after the waterfront property and he wants to give it to Cece on his birthday. Mm-hmm. So I assume Lionel knows when Cece's birthday is, so he'll know what the deadline is. And he says he's got a new assignment for her. He notices the Capwells have been doing a lot of undersea oil assessments, and he wants some data about the
core samples. And she says, well, it's going to be kind of hard since I work in the hotel division to get this oil info. And then he says that she's beautiful and smart. Because, of course, we've been wondering ever since it was revealed they knew each other, whether they're having some sort of romantic relationship as well. I mean, they're hanging out, having a hot tub together, but it's not really clear.
Well, I would be interested to know, and I guess that'll reveal itself slowly. How they knew each other, like how they met, and how he recruited her for this. Has she got some background in this sort of thing? Like, is she a detective or something? Was she just an affair he had or something? Then he realized she maybe had the skill set to do a little spying for him or whatever.
Or perhaps she was planted for Lionel to pick up, and is actually working for another person.
That would be really interesting too.
Trying to figure out what Lionel's doing, and then the
she sent her to Bali to be in the same resort as Lionel.
Yeah. Possibly.
So, meanwhile, Augusta visits Cruz, and, she's kind of lost her access to Joe with him having quit. So, he says to Cruz, I know Joe's innocent, and I want to help in any way I can. Mm-hmm. She's trying to wrangle her way back into, being able to keep tabs on Joe. Mm-hmm. Cruz says that Joe's weeding out his friends, the ones he can trust and the ones he can't. So, I think Cruz knows that Augusta's not trustworthy.
I think Cruz is generally a little more savvy than Joe.
I think he said they've never met, though, right? Or
this was his first meeting with Augusta.
He said, I think you're Augusta Lockridge, aren't you?
Yeah.
So. Now, Warren tells his parents that Lakin has changed for the better being in L.A. Mm-hmm. Lionel asks if she's in love with Ted, and Augusta says, if so, I will nip that in the bud. But Warren says, don't. Why not let the feud end?
Yeah.
And later, Lionel is fixing the bed that was broken. Mm-hmm. Lionel and Augusta end up in the circle of truth because they were wondering about each other's morning activities.
Lying their asses off again.
He asks where she was, and instead of saying she was with Cruz, she says, I was grocery shopping. Mm-hmm. And then she asks where he was, and he says, I was down on the beach to check out the erosion. Mm-hmm. So they both kind of smirk at each other's answers. So. Yeah. Then Lionel goes back to fixing the bed, and he hurts his back. He says, I should have had Joe Perkins fix this. So he wants Augusta to give him a massage, and mentions that she used to be a masseuse before they got married. So some more backstory on Augusta there. She refuses, and he offers her $1,000 plus tip. And she says, I wouldn't do it for $1 million. So he calls him masseuse, and Augusta opens the door, and there's two girls there, ready to massage Lionel. So she lets them in reluctantly, and she wonders why he needs two. She says, one specializes in the top half, and one specializes in the bottom half.
They're not particularly dressed either.
No. Perhaps he knows of a massage place that doesn't, skimpy uniforms. So she comes in later to check on the massaging. He's on his back somehow, even though he's, got back problems. He's just got a towel draped over his torso, and they're manipulating various parts of him. She says, that's it. You're out of here. Gets rid of them. He goes, well, finally, it's your turn now. And she reaches over to, we think, massage his neck, but she actually starts strangling him. So.
We did learn in this whole little scene that Augusta was previously a masseuse before she married Lionel. Yeah. So she was, I'm guessing, not from the same class level as the Lockridges and the Capwells. Yeah. And Minx has been making these little insinuations about Augusta for basically the entire series so far. So that's not really a surprise. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd be interesting to find out more of Augusta's backstory as the show progresses. Mm-hmm. Now, Lionel calls a guy. It's probably the guy he phoned the last time, although we didn't see him. And he worked something called the Foundation. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of noise in the street just during that scene, and I didn't quite catch everything. But he basically tells Lionel that he's found the problem with the deeds. That Lionel's father, when he transferred the property from the foundation, that's what it sounds like, to the Lockridge family, that he never had anyone witness the document. And so that makes it invalid. And he says it's actually up for auction next week, and the Capwells have already moved things forward, and no one... He talks about there only being like 2 bidders or something registered, so the Capwells are actually keeping it quiet too, that it's up for bids. I don't know how all that stuff happens in the background, or what this foundation is.
Yeah, a lot of it seems to be Mason pulling strings in the background too.
I don't know if it's some sort of land trust foundation related to the mission being the original owners back in the 1700s. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out more about that as the auction approaches. Now, Mason pops into Peter's office. Peter's not there. And Veronica is there. She thanks him for last night, but also apologizes for bringing up the Lockridges. And Mason says it's a half-century of feuding that's responsible for the problem. Then Peter finally arrives, sees that he's been injured, and he tells Mason Joe hit him. And he's very annoyed that Peter didn't take the opportunity to call the police to get Joe's parole revoked. But he says that Kelly stopped him. And then Peter tells Mason that Joe and Kelly just keep seeing each other. And Mason's response was, it appears Joe Perkins has gotten the better of you. So that's not something Peter wants to hear.
Well, that was a snide little dig at Peter, wasn't it?
Now, down in Los Angeles, Lake and Ted, Jade, and Danny all wake up after their nights. Both the guys are on the floor, and Lakin's on the couch, and Jade's in her bed, but Danny's got a smile on his face, so he enjoyed the fan dance, apparently. Suddenly, unexpectedly, Holmby calls. He calls Jade and reminds her that she signed an exclusive contract, so he better not ever see her doing any other acting for anyone else. So she says, well, I'm going home. And he wants to know where that is, but she, cleverly just says Mars.
Yeah.
So maybe he won't find her in Santa Barbara. So Peaches and Jake help them pack, and then they say goodbye. And then the following conversations are in their various cars, Ted with Lakin and Danny with Jade. Danny says it's a bummer that all his friends are going to Lyman, and he's stuck at Santa Barbara High. Now, we had wondered before how Joe and Kelly met, if Kelly was going to a prep school.
Yeah.
And, the Perkins family presumably was not. But now we find out that Jade's mother works at Lyman Prep.
Yeah.
And that is why Jade also is going there. So that's a mystery that we now have resolved. Although I do remember Joe saying a couple of episodes ago, his mom goes to a job she hates every day.
Yeah,
and
that's
we
right.
thought it was a factory line work job.
That's
maybe
what
we
I
just
thought.
implied
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Maybe we just inferred that. So they say that they should stick together. They should find some way to be together, even if she's at Lyman Prep. Meanwhile, in the car, Ted says to Lakin a similar thing. They need to stay together in a group. Ted says he thinks the best way to tell everyone his plan is to throw a dinner party that night. So when they get back to Santa Barbara, Ted invites Cece, and Cece first says he's busy, but when he kind of hears it, he thinks he better be there if the Lockridges are going to be there. So Kelly and Mason and Ted have a scene, and Kelly says, "Oh, I wonder if it's a marriage proposal."
Yeah.
And that's, of course, what we were wondering, too, after the last one. Mason is horrified at that thought. But Ted says, "No, I can't tell anyone before." So Lakin invites her parents. Minx asks Lakin if it's casual. She's too young to be serious, and she shouldn't be with a Capwell anyway. And at the end... I should mention that they did say back in LA that 2 of the 4 people who were threatening Jade and Danny are in prison, but the other two are out. So I don't know if that's an ongoing thing or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at the end of the show, everyone's licking a tatter at the beach bar, because that's where the dinner party is. So it's kind of a not very classy place to have a dinner party.
Yeah.
And Augusta and Lionel arrive, and Augusta says, if it's what I think it is, I'm very worried. So she obviously thinks the same as Kelly, I think, that it's a marriage proposal. And then Cece arrives and joins them. That was pretty much how that ended, right? With them coming in.
Yeah.
That is the episode.
So I had just one question about the scene with Holby. I thought that Jade had signed the contract with the producer, who was Baron something, not with Holby.
Yeah, I don't know.
That might be used later when she gets out of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Unless that producer is a front for him.
Yeah, that's another thought.
I got mixed up with all the different guys we met, because they talked about it. We met the weird guy, and then we met the producer, and then we met Holby.
Yeah.
And it was
and
a little unclear how they're...
She's only 17? Is she legally allowed to sign a contract?
That might be another...
Oh.
That might be
in
another...
Canada, there's an age limit, right?
Yeah.
Which she may not understand, being young.
Yeah.
She'll have to get Mason's help on that.
Yeah.
That'll probably factor in.
Yeah.
And, any thoughts as to what Ted's announcement could be?
Well, you had some theories, didn't you?
I think they're already married. But that, again, depends on if they can legally enter into a contract.
Yeah.
I wonder if he'll say they're all going to move in together, all four of them, into a house. Or something like that.
And he'll
that's
finance
a good
it.
thought.
It's kind of like what happened on Days of Our Lives last year with all the kids moving into a loft.
Yeah,
because then it's not just him and Lakin, right?
Yeah.
There's 4 rooms, and so yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
House near the university. No, they're still going to high school. So. That's my guess.
Yeah.
I really can't remember how this moves forward from 35 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't really think of anything either unless it's some sort of a ploy to say, well, we're going to take a break until the end of high school, and then they're planning to go to the same college together, and they'll maybe room with each other there. Mm. Or maybe they wouldn't tell them that, but they're planning to see each other again in college.
So we had a storyline wrap up this episode. Now, the only storyline that's wrapped up so far in the past has been Joe plus Augusta.
Yes.
Every other storyline that has been introduced, mostly from episode 1, is still ongoing. So, and now we have Peaches plus Jake, I call it.
Yeah.
That's wrapped up.
Yeah, that was a happy ending.
They are together, it seems. But when they said goodbye to the kids, they stayed in their apartment for some reason, even though she lives across the hall. So yep, that's it. That's a wrap for Peaches and Jake, but also another surprising last episode that you may not be aware from just having watched it. That is the last time we see Dr. Tony Carlin.
Oh.
Kelly's very best friend. Will never appear again. So that must be just something that went by the wayside as the show progressed. They start going in different directions from the original tensions, basically what works and what doesn't. So it's a shame.
Yeah.
Because Kelly has no one really.
No.
Other than Ted, maybe, as a not weird family member.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I guess the Kids in LA storyline is done too, unless Holmby still shows up. I didn't look at IMDb to see if he still shows up at any point. So.
Yeah, I have to admit I was, remembering the first, I guess the pilot of this show, where Joe had such a hard time getting to Santa Barbara and there were thugs chasing him and that. I was almost a little bit worried about Jade and Danny on their car trip up to Santa Barbara, that maybe Holmby had figured out where Jade was going and sent those two, because only 2 of the 4 are being arrested. Maybe he sent the other 2 after.
Holmby's one of the 2 that didn't get arrested.
Right. So I was a little concerned about that.
He was the gang leader.
Yeah.
Well, I guess one of the other guys had a gun.
Yeah.
So it's probably him.
Yeah.
And the other guy was trying to undress a 17-year-old girl, so he's probably the other one.
Yeah.
So I have here a crisp, or at least flexible, $5 bill.
Okay.
I have 2 of them, actually. If either of you can guess the shocking first sentence that we will hear at the start of the next episode. And Tanya, you had...
I'm going back to Santa Barbara.
I'm going back to Santa Barbara. Who would say that?
The witness?
Are they all in Santa Barbara?
I don't know who the witness is. But...
Okay.
I haven't seen that. I didn't see that one yet.
Yesterday you had a thought of we're getting married.
No, I changed it.
Or we already are married.
I think someone's
I'll
coming
let
back.
you have all 3 of those.
I think someone's coming back to stir up the plot line with Joe and Peter
so
and
a person
Kelly.
will show up.
So, and that person would, rock Augusta a little bit, and because she seemed very concerned about Joe suddenly. So.
Yeah.
All right, Diane, what was your guess for the first sentence we hear in episode 34?
My guess actually goes in the opposite direction. My guess is that Kelly takes her flowers up to her room. She reads the note from Joe, and the line in the note says, "My dearest Kelly, by the time you read this message, I will have left Santa Barbara forever."
Wow.
That's a good one.
Good one.
So, the opposite. Yeah.
And we didn't see David Hasselhoff again. So
No.
So that's four people who left the show this week, if you count his one appearance. So the David Hasselhoff appearance, I guess, would have been exciting, like a big star. Others may have been excited by Jake, because he, was the voice of Cinderella, I think I mentioned to you. It's like when we're watching these old shows on MeTV and we'll see Paul Burke will show up.
Yeah.
We just watched, MeTV just started showing Highway Patrol, and Paul Burke showed up in the second episode. And we know him from The Naked City, which we'd watched.
Well, I was actually excited to see Virginia Mayo, who was also an established star, I guess, in the 1940s and 50s.
I remember at least one more guest star in the future, plus a couple of musical people that, didn't really mean anything to me, but I think with the synergy of the corporation, they still tried doing some crossover stuff with having musical guests perform their big hit, or hope to be hit, on the show. So we'll be seeing some more faces when we least expect them, I think. So, all right, that is all. And we are going to be back after we watch episode 34 and hear the exciting
Very
first
excited
sentence.
to hear that.
We will see you then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Part of C.C. Capwell is now being played by Paul Burke.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about that.
Oh, that is so cool. And you just happened to mention Paul Burke.
Well, yes, I was going to actually mention before your predictions to give you a chance to include
But you
him in
didn't,
your
so
prediction.
you didn't give us full disclosure.
No.
But it's still fair. I was way off.
Yeah, I mean, 33 episodes with Peter Mark Richmond. You don't expect a recast a month into a show.
No.
Right?
So...
And he's gone now for good?
Yeah, but actually, when I was doing the research for his Spotlight, which we'll be doing this week, he was only ever brought in temporarily on purpose until they could find a permanent CC after Lloyd Bochner had his heart attack the night before filming.
Oh.
So he knew it was temporary, and
he had his gig on Dynasty as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had an interview with a French Santa Barbara fan magazine where he basically said he hated Santa Barbara and was glad it ended. So, so yeah.
That probably made him play a better CC in a way.
Yeah, not being happy to be there the whole time.
Yeah.
Shall we see what the kids have to say?
So we'll see how Paul Burke is.
He does look much more pompous.
But the thing is, he's crabby, just like the previous one. But
Yes.
is he as, like, handsome? Like, is the Santana CC thing gonna play as well?
So
With this new guy that looks quite a bit different.
Right.
Like, because I've seen that in soap operas before, where they recast one half of a couple, and it just doesn't work, right?
But if what you said is true, her purpose is to find her son, then maybe they can use that.
yeah.
They can somehow make that happen quicker, and then she's done.
Yeah, it'll be
Mason
interesting
can
to see
share
how
drinks.
he is with all the characters that he's paired with, if things
Yeah.
work as well. Because I
Or
thought,
if it changes the direction of it.
because I always thought that Peter Mark Richmond was the perfect CC Capwell.
I liked him.
So
I would have loved to have seen Lloyd Bachner in the role. Yeah.
I think it would have been.
Yeah.
So,
But Paul Burke was in the role for quite a while, was he not?
we'll find out
Oh.
eventually.
Right.
There are a few more CCs over the 8 years.
All right.
Welcome back to Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara with Tanya. Episode 34, Week 7, etc. Original air date, September 13th, 1984. So, we have the big dinner with the new CC Capwell.
Mm-hmm.
Ted says that he and Lakin want to live together. No one seems to care for that. He says, well, we could move back to our own places, but we have 8 rules, including Lakin and Ted can go to each other's houses anytime they want. Messages will not be intercepted. Pigeons will not be fed to other family members. And they don't want the feud ever mentioned again in their presence.
Yeah.
And once or twice a year, the Lockridge and Capwell families will get together for dinner at each other's houses. So, it seems to be that they've agreed to that, and that Ted and Lakin can move back in, I guess. Although Cece says no way to the rule about having dinner at each other's places. But then Ted and Lakin end up going to a motel, so I'm not sure why they did
Yeah,
that.
I didn't understand that either. I have to say, in this scene, my favorite part of this scene was Warren confronting Augusta on Lakin and Ted's behalf, and reminding Augusta of her own precocious youth. And he basically says to her, "Were you as good and well behaved as Lakin when you were young?" And really confronts her with her own behavior.
Augusta's excuse was, well, I didn't have money then.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of an odd, rebuttal.
But I did wonder if that was actually instrumental in at least winning her over enough to this arrangement to accept their terms, because she was very, very opposed to it at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of the adults are going to keep plotting
I think so
more
too.
quietly
Yeah, I think
against
so.
Mm-hmm.
those kids.
I think so for sure.
Yeah. Kelly has just received flowers, and she looks at the ring, and she tells Peter that it's from Joe. Peter is suspicious about that,
Yeah.
but she says to Peter that his love has kept her going for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So she's still trying to say, we're getting married in November,
Yeah.
what more do you want from me?
Yeah.
Peter reads the inscription on the ring with the date, and it causes him to confess to her that he's the one who told Channing that she and Joe were going to run off together on that day.
Yeah.
So she gets very angry,
Yes.
and she storms off.
Yeah.
And I guess after he leaves, she comes back down, and she wants to leave, but she's all discombobulated. She's looking for her car keys.
Yeah.
Both Rosa and Ted don't think it's a good idea for her to drive.
Mm-hmm.
So she ends up going back up to her room with Ted, and she won't tell Ted what's wrong.
Yeah.
She says she's angry with Peter, but she won't say why. He tells Cece that Kelly's really upset, but when they go back to Kelly's bedroom, it's empty. So she's vanished somehow.
And I guess the question is now, where did she go?
Mm-hmm. I think she went to see Joe. What do you think?
Maybe.
Where else would she go?
Well, unless she went
Since
to
her
the-
best friend is no longer
She might
going
go
to
to
be on the
cruises.
show.
Yeah, I was thinking of the yacht to try once again to have a bit of alone time. It
Ooh.
didn't work so well the last time.
Don't they own a hotel?
Okay, yeah, but it's under construction.
Oh.
The presidential suite is under construction,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Maybe she'll go there with maybe she'll meet Joe at the presidential suite once the construction is
Oh,
finished.
maybe.
Not realizing that Peter has installed a two-way mirror in the closet.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That could
Yeah,
be...
that's the other thing with the hotel. Peter's sort of the manager of it, so
Mhm.
that's not a good place to go to get away from Peter,
Okay.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
that's interesting. Well, that's one possible thing that could happen in that room.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah. Lionel's reading through the documents for the house while Augusta walks in and says that the Capwells walked all over them, or the kids walked all over them, actually, yes. Lionel phones that guy from yesterday, who I think his name was Mark, and the guy says definitely the land transfer transaction was not completed, and Lionel thinks that's weird because, the man doing it was Mix's godfather and was a friend of the family.
Mm-hmm.
But the other guy doesn't know what to say but to that. It's going up for auction. Then Augusta lets in two masseurs with massage tables.
Male.
As little dressed as the women were.
Yes.
Yes. So she says to Lionel, "Oh, why don't you let Lionel show you his collection of medieval chastity belts while I make the bedroom presentable?" So she wants to give Lionel some alone time with them before she goes off with them alone. But Lionel thinks, "Oh, it's so great that you decided to take on Mrs. Lockridge with her, not worried about the risk." And he basically tells them she has an exotic form of jungle rot in their noses and ears, and minds are at risk. And he
Yeah.
pretends to be crazy.
Yeah.
So they back away. He tips them, and they leave their possibly contaminated table there and run off.
So Augusta's attempt to get back at Lionel unfortunately backfires.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe that's what you wanted. I don't know.
I don't know.
Lionel goes to his banker, and his banker says, "Oh, there might be a problem getting the board to approve that much money for the auction
Mm-hmm.
because the Lockridge finances, the net worth has been going down for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So Lionel says, I need that money for the auction, and threatens to change banks.
Mm.
So I don't know if Lionel will get that money that he needs from the bank or even another bank. I mean, I assume they have the same type of board members who would be unwilling to
Mm-hmm.
just hand over money to people who are possibly a risk now, even though they must, be dealing with their estates. At the Andrades, they're having dinner at the same time as the Capwell Lockridge dinner is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Whole family's there: Santana, Danny, Ruben, and Rosa. Ruben quizzes Danny about how much money he made with stunt work.
Mm-hmm.
I think he said it was about $54. So,
Yeah.
but Danny's, clear on the fact that it may not be a way to
Mhm.
earn a living. So, but Ruben says we've saw before, very what's the word? Very conservative in his thinking about
Yeah.
what people should do to earn money and not be slackers. So
Mhm.
he's probably going to keep an eye on what Danny does, in the evenings and weekends after school.
Mm-hmm.
They also tell Santana that she should be dating Cruz.
Yeah, the whole family seems very enthused about the idea of Santana partnering in some way with Cruz.
I like Cruz.
Yeah, I like
Good
Cruz
partner.
too.
Mm-hmm. As Rosa said before, he comes from a good family.
Yeah.
So they leave when Cruz arrives.
Mhm.
They start giggling and run away. Cruz gives Santana some flowers and he quizzes her a little more about how her Sophia thing is going. Are you 50% Sophia and 50% Santana this week? Are you going to be 70-30 next week? Anyway, she throws the flowers in the vase at him. She doesn't like that at all. Then he talks about, what if you become the mistress of Capwell Manor? You'll be your parents' boss. That's going to be weird.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't really... He thinks there's more, going on, but she just won't say.
Yeah.
She won't say what it is. So then Cruz wants to discuss the love letters that Joe stole from Channing's room, and Santana still can't believe that he's fine with the fact that Joe broke into Channing's room and stole all this stuff and all this personal stuff. And he says, well, it's been it's been 5 years, what difference does it make if Joe reads, 5-year-old love letters? And she says, well, they used to meet at a gazebo between the Capwell and Lockridge properties. Maybe he had some of the letters there. So she said, don't tell Joe, but then he says, oh, he's going to tell Joe.
Yeah.
So she's unhappy with that. So she sneaks out at night and goes through the Capwell house. Rosa spots her and goes out into the jungles of the Capwell property and finds this old decrepit gazebo.
Which apparently has been ignored by the gardeners for years.
Mm-hmm. And they did mention Reuben was the gardener recently.
Yeah, so that's a bit of indictment of her dad's
gardening
work.
skills.
Yeah.
And then we
Or
heard all
his
about
dislike of the Lockridge property, since
That
it apparently
would be-
borders the property.
Yes, that could be part of it too.
Yeah, so there's like a glass, it's like metal lawn furniture there with a glass tabletop.
Mm-hmm.
Or perhaps years and years ago, before this group of adults, some other Lockridges and Capwells met there.
Yes. Oh, that would be fun.
I seem to remember the gazebo being a thing for
Probably
a long
not
time
me,
on this
but
show.
maybe someone else.
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
not just going to be Channing and Santana's place. So she's trying to remember what Channing told her about where he might have hidden the letters. I guess she's not quite sure where his hiding place was, and she looks around a bit but can't find them. But we see, as she leaves, having given up, that Dominic is hiding in the shadows. So I don't know how Dominic knew Santana was going there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where Dominic lives, in the gazebo.
Maybe encasing the joint regularly.
Yeah, so Santana muttered enough things out loud that I think even if Dominic didn't know what was happening for any reason, that Dominic might just search the gazebo. Or Dominic knew about Channing's hiding place in his room. Maybe he knows about the gazebo hiding place. So.
Dominic seems to be able to get in and out of the Capwell property without setting off any alarms or anything.
And I guess CC never did have the dogs go on 24-hour patrol.
Yeah.
So that's lucky. So I think we'll see more of the gazebo. We'll see Dominic searching the gazebo.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to find out more of the letters, because Santana said, Chris, there's something in there I don't want you to know.
Yeah, that'll
So
be interesting.
I assume it's the baby,
Maybe.
but maybe there's more secrets. Dun, dun, dun. So how do we feel about Paul Burke as CC Capwell after one episode?
Not sold.
He seems a bit stiff to me.
Yeah. Not quite as pompous as the other guy,
Yeah.
Now,
which I enjoyed.
He's reading dialogue that was written by the writers with
Yes.
Peter Mark Richmond in mind. Maybe they'll start,
Yeah.
changing the style up a little bit once they get used to Paul Burke's delivery, or that the scripts catch up with that. They probably have a couple weeks of scripts in advance, ready.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And different scenes. I mean, they were in the
Yeah.
restaurant talking to the kids.
Yeah, it was an oddball scene having all those people there together in a big open setting like that. So.
Yeah.
We will see. As I say, I never really warmed to Paul Burke. So, all right.
Okay.
Anything else?
I guess the only other thing I noticed is that we're still a little bit unclear as to how many children Rosa and Reuben have.
That's right, because we heard about their two other daughters a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
and now Cruz mentions your brother and your sister to Santana. So either Olivia or the other one has vanished from existence without us having ever seen her.
Yeah.
So maybe they're vanishing like a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
She'll soon have no sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually lost 5 actors this week.
Yeah.
David Hasselhoff made his final appearance. Peaches, Virginia Mayo, and Jake
Yeah.
made their final appearance. Dr. Tony made her final appearance, and CC Capwell number 2 made his final appearance. So we are now on our 3rd CC Capwell in 33 days,
Wow.
34 days. So they're burning through Capwells.
They sure are.
All right. Hopefully there'll be some fun. Tomorrow's a Friday episode, so
Cliffhanger.
We'll
I
do
hope.
another recording tomorrow after we watch episode 35 of Santa Barbara. See you.
Bye.
Hello and welcome back. We have finished watching episode 35 of Santa Barbara. Original air date, September 14th, 1984. We're at a Friday episode, so there should be some exciting stuff happening. Now, Santana has a nice wooden box that she has in her apartment, and she opens it up, and it's where she keeps all her letters from Channing. So she's specifically looking for a letter that describes how to open a secret compartment in the gazebo, where Channing kept his letters, I guess. So Santana's kind of reading some of them out loud to herself, not aware that Dominic is watching somehow. She finds the one where the gazebo hiding place is described, but Cruz interrupts her, and they start arguing about Joe. And she says he's, defending a killer, and he says, no, you're defending the killer, who's out loose somewhere. She then goes over to Cece and says, oh, I remember you guys have a gazebo. It might be nice to refurbish it. I think it just needs a coat of paint, and then we could move it to under the trees near the pool. He thinks that's a great idea. So she says, I'll just pop out and go and see it. And he says, I'll come with you. She goes, oh, no, you're too busy. I'll do it. No, I'll come with you. But it just took me a minute. Oh, God, this will be great. A fun trip. So she's having trouble getting him not to come with her on her mission to steal the letters. So they go out there, and they seem to have jogged there towards the end there. They kind of burst into the area, and Cece's really said he's having fun with her.
Yeah.
And then the phone starts to ring. No, Rosa shows up with the phone.
Yeah.
Actually, when Rosa showed up and said, oh, Mr. Capwell, there's a phone call for you, I thought, oh, that's perfect. Cece will have to leave to get the phone, but then she hands this cordless phone to him. And so Rosa leaves right away. So Santana, while he's on the phone, is like looking around near the gazebo, trying to find this little hatch. And we hear Cece's on the phone with Gina. Gina. And clearly she's with someone who's having a heart attack. And Cece's saying things like, oh, do you know CPR? And is that Brandon I hear in the background? You got to get him out of there. So she and Brandon are witnessing someone have a heart attack. And when Cece hangs up, he says to Santana, oh, I've got to go to L.A. right away. And grabs her, and they run back to the house. So Santana is not left alone there.
Although she has been, without knowing it, tantalizingly close, actually, to her son and her son's guardian.
Yeah, she doesn't know Brandon is her son's.
No.
Because she doesn't know the name that they gave him. So, she arrives home to find that someone has broken into her place, and she finds that specifically the letter with the information about the gazebo is gone. So she phones Cruz to come over because she blames him immediately, saying, oh, you stole this letter for Joe.
Yeah.
Which is kind of odd, because Cruz has never come across as distrustworthy at all,
I would think maybe it's partly in the moment, but also because Cruz is really the only one she knows who's come out so strongly in favor of Joe. That's all I can think.
So they end up kissing after discussing the fact that he didn't do it. So then he says she needs someone to take care of her, and she says, oh yeah, that's me, I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah.
But she does agree to let him look for a security system for her, maybe just to get him off her back. So meanwhile at the gazebo, Dominic finds the hatch very quickly to the secret compartment and is reaching in when someone from behind yells, freeze! Now Joe's not in this episode, but it kind of sounded like Joe.
I thought it sounded like Joe.
Yeah, they paid him a lot to say one line. Now, back at the Capwell mansion, throughout the day, Peter starts the day off blaming Ted for letting Kelly leave. This is still the middle of the night. Then the next morning, Peter blames Cece. Oh no, Peter blames Cece for not getting Joe out of town.
Yeah.
And then he leaves, and the next morning, it's just the family there. Kelly phones, but she only wants to talk to Ted. And then she gives Ted a phone number where she can be reached, but orders him not to give it to Peter or Mason or Cece. Both Peter and Cece try to get it, and Ted will not give it to them. So they're quite upset with that.
Once again, I find Peter's attitude very interesting, that he's busy mouthing off both of Kelly's brothers and, making sort of snide remarks about CC when he is depending upon these people for his livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's obviously on the outs with Kelly now, so...
But they seem to let him.
Yeah, they seem to let him. I find that really strange, too.
Well, I don't think Cece's aware of his outbursts until today. It's mostly been directed at Cece, at Mason in the past.
Yeah.
And Mason hasn't told Dad because he's keeping that up his sleeve for when he needs it.
Yes.
So.
And Mason seems to be less of a whiner than Peter. Peter seems to be unable to fix problems. He seems to be in this pity party of, oh, why is this world happening to me?
He freaks out quickly when things don't go his way.
Yeah.
Mason is more of a strategist. Mm-hmm. It's like he likes his revenge served cold.
Yeah. He's plotting. Seems to always be plotting against everyone at the same time.
Yeah.
Now Mason says, hey Peter, how come Augusta knew that I was going to try and buy that land off the Lockridges? Peter goes, I don't know, I didn't tell her. So,
lying again.
Of course, Mason doesn't believe him. It says, if anything goes wrong with this deal, I will tell Kelly everything about you.
Yeah.
So that includes the fact that he was sleeping with Augusta when they were together already.
Plus, it also implies that Mason knows a lot more about Peter as well.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think Mason has actually looked into Peter's background. I think Mason's had Peter tailed probably for quite a while. So.
Because the first time they let him know was that time Augusta went into his apartment, but obviously he might have been tailing Peter for 5 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because he had said the police officers, that were with him on that search warrant, if they found the deed, they could be trusted to steal it for him. So he's got people on the force that will do nefarious things for him. Mm-hmm. And as we find out, there's no shortage of people in Santa Barbara willing to do nefarious things.
Yeah.
Because Richard walks in. Richard is the, I guess, chief maintenance person for Capwell Hotels that we saw before, who was so gung-ho when Peter came up with the somewhat bizarre scheme to put a two-way mirror in the presidential suite. Richard jumped on it immediately and seemed kind of excited. And today he's like, oh, the suite's ready, the suite's ready. And then Mason immediately makes a date with Veronica to come to the presidential suite. He says he's meeting with a bunch of bankers, obviously to get the money for the auction. But then after they leave, it's just him and Veronica. So Peter confirms with Richard that he hasn't told anyone else about the two-way mirror. So he says, don't tell Mason. Then Veronica confides in Peter that she hates Mason and is only dating him because she's worried about her job.
Yeah.
And which is interesting because she's just actually a plant working for Lionel, but she does need that job to do her
she's
spine.
Actually employed by Peter.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
But that seems to show Peter's power is limited.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she says, oh, by the way, what's this invoice for a two-way mirror installed in the Capwell presidential suite that Richard left on my desk?
Awesome.
Yeah.
So Peter's like, he just told me, he didn't tell anyone. But thankfully, or perhaps cleverly, Veronica's mentioned that she hates Mason. Mm-hmm. And he immediately takes her into his confidence and says, oh, let's go look at the two-way mirror.
Yeah.
So they go up to the suite and they find the linen closet in the hallway that's adjoined it. And they hadn't moved the linens after all, as had originally been talked about. It's still a linen closet, but they've actually put a panel over the mirror that you have to hit a special lever to open. So the linen, the housekeeping staff won't be suspicious about why why that linen closet now has no linen in it. So.
Yeah.
So he explains that to her and how the microphone works, and then she immediately tells Lionel about it.
Yeah.
And says, there's a meeting tonight of Mason with the bankers. There's a two-way mirror, and they're talking about where she could hide a key for him so he could get up there.
Mm-hmm.
Now Ted comes over to the Lockridge house in the morning and invites Lakin over for breakfast, immediately testing both sides of both
Yes.
families to see if they'll live up to the agreement, if they can see each other at either place whenever they want. So Minx shows up and says, "Oh, I hear there was an agreement made that I wasn't a party to," and there's a bit of discussion about their young love, and mentions things like it's wrong to ignore the past, and something happened years ago when I was a child which I will never forget, something that caused hatred for the Capwell family. And then she says she loves Ted and he can call her Grandma.
Yeah. And it does a 180 from that.
She seems to believe that whatever the generational hatred is between the families is just ingrained in them, and that will come out at some point.
Yeah.
Either in an argument or in something, and they will both take their own family sides, causing them to rift.
So
Yeah.
I guess if Minx was a child, and I'm guessing like the 1910s,
Maybe, yeah.
that her dad and Cece's grandfather maybe were the ones that started the feud. So we're trying to narrow down the timeline based on the few. I mean, Mason once mentioned the turn of the century, and then the next episode he said 50 years ago. So that's a 30-year gap.
Yeah.
So which is good. There's some flexibility there.
Yeah, and
Minx.
he could be talking about different iterations of this feud as well, if it's passed on through the generations.
I always got the feeling that Minx was 80. So maybe that's because Dame Judith Anderson was 80 when she did the role. So, maybe we'll do a summary of the ages of all the various layers of the families.
Mm-hmm.
So, when Ted goes back to the Capwell house, Eden phones, and we don't hear her voice.
No.
Like we did that time with Lionel on the phone before he was introduced. And Ted asks her to please come home because Kelly will listen to you.
Yeah.
And she tells him that maybe she can come home for Dad's birthday, but don't tell anyone. She might not be able to, but if she does, she wants it to be a surprise.
Yeah.
So we have heard about Dad's birthday a couple of times now in relation to Mason giving the deed to the Lockridge property to Cece as a gift. But we don't really know when it is.
Yeah.
We know we've got a wedding to look forward to in November, but I assume Cece's birthday would be an event before that, so maybe late September or early October or something.
It's definitely going to be a milestone, though, where it looks like several events are coming together around the sale of the property, around us finally probably getting to be Eden. So there'll be lots to look forward to then.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not quite sure when Gina shows up, but we'll be able to see her at some point, and Brandon too.
Mm-hmm.
So Augusta phones Peter and says she needs to meet with him. Since he's going to be at the hotel anyway, he says to meet her at the presidential suite. So this is before the meeting Mason's going to have. So Augusta and Lionel lie to each other about where they're planning to go tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So they each think the other will be somewhere else, and they can sneak over to the Capwell Hotel. So Lionel sneaks up the second elevator that Veronica told him about, gets the key, and before Lionel gets there, Peter is just installing a tape recorder to do some recording, and then he exits and goes. I don't know if he goes back into the suite or if he goes downstairs, but Lionel slips into the linen closet, opens the little hatch, and then he finds the audio switch, I think Veronica told him about later or something. And by then, Peter comes back, but it's with Augusta.
Mm-hmm.
So Peter and Augusta go into the suite and come into view of Lionel, who's still, practicing working the equipment. And he is shocked to see the two of them, but he's also... And he says, aha, So he thinks this is definitely going to be an interesting
Yeah.
thing that he's about to witness.
It wasn't maybe the meeting that he thought he was going to see initially, but he's interested in it nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. So, what's interesting is that Veronica didn't seem to warn Lionel that, Peter is probably going to want to be in that same linen closet to spy on Mason.
Yeah.
Maybe the implication is he won't bother during the boring meeting about the funds, that he will go in there once the other men leave, and it's just Veronica and Mason. So hopefully Lionel isn't still in that closet when...
Yeah.
He was also recording.
Yeah.
So he may come back for the recording
that's true.
after.
So
Yeah.
Because he doesn't need to watch it, he just needs to hear
Yeah.
it if he knows who's in the suite.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. So that should work out well. Any other things you wanted to mention, or
Nope, it's my last day.
predictions?
Yeah.
Well, it's your last day, but I rope you into one more episode.
Yay.
Predictions? Gazebo, Joe, letters. Well, one way or the other, Joe and or Dominic is going to get to read some letters.
Yeah.
From Santana to Channing, I guess.
Well, I guess we'll find out who is behind the command to freeze.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
The assumption is it's Joe. What if it's
Yeah.
Reuben? He goes, "Oh, I haven't cleaned the vines off this gazebo for 14 years. I better do that.
It's my new
It's on
job.
my list."
Yeah.
So, okay. Well.
And I have to say hi to Maddox.
Oh,
Hi, Maddox.
hi, Maddox.
Hi, Maddox.
Maddox is our viewer of the week, and we will be back next week with week 8 of Misha and Diane Watch Santa Barbara.
Bye.
Bye.
Welcome to Photo Corner with. Welcome back to Misha and Diane Watch Santa Barbara.
This is at the bottom.
One more time.
With Tanya.